My journey began when my single dad, a delivery man, couldn't solve this chess puzzle. I will never forget that day. It felt like everything was crashing down around us. The sun was slipping, casting long shadows in our tiny living room. The air was thick, like a storm was brewing just outside. Dad sat across the table, his brow furrowed deep in thought. He stared at that chessboard, pieces scattered like broken dreams. I could see his hands trembling, the way his fingers brushed against the cold wood like it might spark some miracle. But there was none. Only silence. Only tension. I glanced at the window. The streetlights flickered on, but all I saw was darkness creeping in. It made me ache. It made me wonder how my dad, this man who worked tirelessly every day, could be defeated by a simple game. I felt a pang in my heart, a mix of fear and helplessness. He was my rock. Always had been. A strong, proud figure with tattoos tracing stories on his arms, scars of a life lived hard. But in that moment, he felt so fragile. Lost. Under the weight of a puzzle that made no sense. I wanted to reach out, to comfort him, but I couldn't find the words. I just sat there, watching, my own hands clenched into fists on my lap. The night dragged on. I heard the faint hum of the refrigerator, the creak of our old house settling. We were trapped in that stillness, just the two of us against an unknown world. It was suffocating. I wanted to scream. Then, it happened. The doorbell rang, jolting us from our daze. Dad's eyes widened, confusion turning to fear. Who could be at our door at this hour? I held my breath, heart pounding like a drum. He approached cautiously, glancing back at me, uncertainty painted on his face. The chess puzzle sat there, untouched, mocking him. Suddenly, the door swung open, and there they stood, strangers. Their faces were shrouded in shadows, but I could make out the glint of something metallic in their hands. Fear flooded my veins. I wanted to yell, to stop him from stepping closer, but my voice disappeared. "Is this the place?" One of them asked, a hint of something ominous in his tone. Dad hesitated. I felt the air thicken, a heavy silence drowning us. I couldn't shake the feeling that this was the moment everything would change. What did they want? Why were they here? My heart raced as I braced for the answer, but before I could even form a question, Dad took a deep breath, his eyes catching mine one last time. And then, everything fell apart. Hey, before we continue with this amazing story, I need to give you an important heads up. Many subscribers have reported that YouTube unsubscribed them without warning. Take a quick second to check the red button below to make sure you're still subscribed to the channel. I'd hate for you to miss any of the exclusive content coming soon. And while you're there, smash that like button, it really helps me out with the algorithm. Oh, and tell me in the comments, which city are you watching from? I love getting to know every amazing person who's part of this community. Your participation makes all the difference. Let's connect. As the door creaked open wider, the shadows loomed large, slipping into our home like unwelcome whispers. My heart was in my throat, and I felt small, so painfully small. I clutched the edges of the table as if that could anchor me, but the reality of strangers at our door shattered my fragile composure. Is this the place? The man asked again, eyes darting past Dad and locking on me. I could feel the weight of his gaze pinning me in place, like a moth caught in a web, struggling to break free. Dad's face paled. Every muscle in his body tensed, and for a moment, fear stripped away his bravado. I could see the memories etched in his expression, every delivery made under the sun, every restless night he had worked to provide for us. And now, it felt like all the burdens he carried were crumbling like the intricate puzzles he loved so much. "Who are you?" he managed to ask, his voice trembling slightly. The man took a step forward, his hand reaching out, revealing the metallic glimmer I had seen before. It was a keychain, adorned with an intricate pattern of chess pieces. I exhaled, confusion blending with fear as the stranger smirked, a strange satisfaction curling at the corner of his lips. "We hear you like puzzles." Figured you'd want to play, he said, the mockery lacing his tone sending shivers down my spine. Just as despair threatened to close in around us, a sudden warmth ignited in my chest. From behind the shadows, another figure emerged, a woman with kind eyes that sparked with understanding. She stepped forward and placed a steadying hand on the man's arm. "Enough, Dan," she said softly. "We're not here to threaten them." My heart raced with cautious hope. Could she bring some light into this dark situation? "Who are you?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. "That I am Rachel," she said, her voice soothing, like a balm to the chaos. "We know your dad. We've seen him out in the streets, delivering packages with a smile even when life gets tough. We just wanted to talk. Dad echoed, his skepticism palpable. Rachel nodded, stepping further into the light, and for the first time, I noticed the warmth emanating from her. "We believe you have something valuable. A gift, a talent. We need help. Things are changing in the city, and we want to harness that potential." "You must be mistaken. We're just," Dad began, cut short by the urgency in Rachel's eyes, "just a delivery man and his daughter. I get it. But please, hear me out." She took a deep breath, as if summoning courage from the depths of her being. "A game is just that, a game. But what if solving it could change lives? Your dad is more than a delivery man, more than a father, he's a strategist at heart. We can teach him something important." Intrigued yet cautious, I pulled back from my instinct to retreat behind the table. "What do you mean? What lives are you looking to change?" Rachel's expression softened. "There's a community initiative that has the potential to shift everything for families like yours, but we need someone with unique skills, someone who can think ahead. Just like at chess. It requires patience, foresight, and insight, things you both already possessed." In that moment, I could see a flicker of something in Dad's eyes, a hint of curiosity. It was fleeting, overshadowed by the looming fear of the unknown and the weight of our struggles. I desperately wanted to jump in, to support this spark, but my mind was crowded with doubt, and then the atmosphere shifted again, the door just a portal to both potential and peril. Would we step through and seize this unexpected opportunity, or would it only lead us deeper into darkness? Suddenly, a loud crash echoed from outside, rattling our door in its frame. The weight of tension fell heavier. My heart raced once again, but this time with concern for the promise of hope tinged with chaos. "Get inside!" shouted a voice from outside, burly silhouettes blocking the light from the porch. As fear washed over us once more, I felt a surge of dread constricting all hope. What new challenges were crashing in on top of everything we faced? The door splintered under the weight of the crowd gathered outside, their silhouettes towering like dark storm clouds that threatened to break and unleash rain at any moment. I felt raw and exposed, a delicate feather caught in a tempest. "Dad!" I cried, realizing that the chaos outside could swallow our fragile moment whole. I could see my father's strong shoulders tighten like a bowstring, his instincts shifting from uncertainty to protectiveness. He stood, resolute, between us and the impending chaos. Rachel stepped back, her demeanor shifting from encouraging to alert. "We have to go. Now!" she shouted, her voice breaking through the suffocating anxiety that hung heavy in the air. But the men outside had already begun to push for entry. Dan, the one with armor-like bravado, moved past Rachel with a maddening confidence. He pointed a finger at Dad, a line drawn between their worlds. "You don't actually think you can just walk away, do you? We were sent for something. You'll show us that." In that moment, my mind spiraled into a whirlwind of fear and disbelief. Were they here for Dad? For me? Our lives had been uncertain, but how could decisions made in a darkness like this lead to a brighter tomorrow? "There's nothing here for you. You can't take us." Dad shouted, grasping my arm, shielding me protectively as he edged back toward the kitchen. "We don't want trouble." The men outside exchanged glances, their expressions tightening into something predatory. Hope dwindled, splintering into thoughts of escape. I couldn't let fear blind my instincts anymore. "Maybe we can help each other," I ventured, my voice steady even as my heart raced wildly beneath my ribs. "What do you want with us?" Dan narrowed his eyes, seemingly taken aback by my audacity. "Smart kid," he said, as if calculating my worth like a chess player sizing up a piece on the board. "We need someone who can lend their insights. Skills." He gestured toward the kitchen, his lips curling into a grin that felt like ice forming over a flame. "And I hear your father might be exactly what we need." "We won't help you," Rachel interjected, stepping forward defiantly. "You don't want to involve innocent people in your plans, Dan." About that his smile transformed, mirroring the wicked glint in his eyes. "You're too late to choose, sweetheart. We're interested in him and this place." I felt the walls of the room close in, suffocating me beneath the weight of its implications. The reality was palpable. They wouldn't just give us the luxury to walk away, they were ready to act on their words, no matter the cost. "Please, just leave us alone," I pleaded, my voice breaking. "We don't want to be part of whatever you're planning." Suddenly, a loud crash of glass shattered the tension, sending everyone reeling. I instinctively turned my head to find an unexpected ally neighbor, Mr. Alder, an elderly man known for his soft demeanor, had thrown a rock through the front window, the shards sparkling like crystals against a backdrop of chaos. "Get away from them!" he shouted, brandishing a broom like a sword, his frail frame exuding a courage that caught everyone off guard. In that disarming moment, I felt an ember ignite within me. This man, much like Rachel, had courage woven from kindness. "Mr. Alder!" I cried, but he motioned for silence, his eyes fierce and alert. Dawn expression faltered, caught between shock and disbelief. In the scant moments that followed, Dad seized the opportunity, thrusting his hand toward Rachel. "We need to go." "You were right, we need to help each other. That I can get us out," Rachel urged. "Follow me." But just as we made to edge backward together, a loud crack reverberated through the air, drowning us in surprise. Another figure stepped from the shadows of the Porcha woman, shrouded in uncertainty yet determined. Her gaze swept over us. "You don't know what you're getting into." The floor felt as if it dropped beneath our feet, mixing panic with confusion. "What?" I whispered, my heart pounding in my chest, now torn between the threat of our circumstances and this stranger's warning, "Leave this city. There's danger lurking in every corner, and it's only going to get worse," she warned, looking directly at me. "If you stay, you'll all be pawns in their game." The room constricted around us, filled with the weight of her words pressing against my chest. Would fleeing be our only option? I wanted to shout for clarity, for the assurance that this wasn't just another storm, but then I noticed Rachel looking back at me earnestly, as if seeing something within my gaze that could forge the path ahead. And then, a revelation tugged at the corners of my mind. "Dad," I spoke urgently, "if they want to use you for something, what is this strategy worth if it means losing our lives in the process?" Just as I posed my question, a sudden realization washed over me, a rekindled flicker of my own potential. Could this be a game not just of pawns and kings, but of strength against adversity? But before any reply could form on my father's lips, the door swung wide open. The crowd paused, as if the universe itself held its breath. "Time's up," Dan barked, taking a step forward with authority, signaling a finale to our uncertain narrative. The door had opened not just to the unknown but to the lifeline of choices yet to be made. I felt my pulse quicken. The next moment would change everything. Would we step boldly into the unexpected, or would that door swing shut, locking us in the darkness of despair? The air hung thick like a chessboard, poised for the decisive move. The door groaned on its hinges, revealing a split in the shadows that encased our world. The men outside surged forward, a tide of malice flooding into our sanctuary. My heart thudded violently in my chest, each beat a drumroll for the chaos that threatened to engulf us. "Get back!" Dad shouted, putting himself between me and the approaching storm, his voice raw and fierce. I could feel the protective energy emanating from him, a layer of hope intertwined with fear. But as the figures moved closer, I saw their intentions were not only to intimidate, they hungered for something that went beyond the physical. "Let's make this simple," Dan sneered, his bravado faltering as he stepped into the dim light of our living room. "You're coming with us, old man." No more games. We know what you can do. A wave of uncertainty crashed over me, smothering any hope I had of reasoning with them. Adrenaline surged through me, and I felt a voice inside me scream for action. I turned to Rachel, who stood wide-eyed and resolute, her fists clenched at her sides. Together, she mouthed, as if forging an unspoken pact. Dad seemed to sense our connection, his gaze meeting mine for just a fleeting moment. In it, I could see questions swirling. Fear. Determination. Love. It was the look of a father who would protect his child at any cost, and the burden of a man caught in a web of choices no one should have to embrace. In an instant, the elderly Mr. Alder lurched forward again, eyes ablaze with fierce defiance. "You don't scare me," he thundered, brandishing his broom with trembling hands. "You'll have to go through me first. Stand back, you old fool," Dan growled, but I could see how Mr. Alder's determination chipped away at their facade of power. Feeling emboldened by the onslaught of unexpected courage, I caught sight of my father's sharp inhalation. "No. It's not just about me anymore," he yelled. "If we go with them, we're abandoning our safety." His voice broke, and in that split second, the facade of the warrior crumbled to reveal the man behind the armor, vulnerable, unsure, but resolute in his love. "You mean abandoning her?" Dan interjected, his eyes flaring with malice as he pointed at me. "You want to be a hero? Fight for the little girl? You'll have to make it out alive first." Another crash reverberated through the air, and suddenly the atmosphere shifted. The stranger from earlier, the woman whose urgency nudged us toward flight, stepped defiantly from the shadows. "Save your breath. None of this will end well if you stay." She thrust a hand out, beckoning us with an earnest plea that made my heart ache. "Last chance," Dan hissed, glancing over his shoulder as if sensing reinforcements advancing. "You come willingly, or we take you by force. Your choice." Tension snapped through the room, thick and electric, as my father's grip tightened on my shoulder. I could see determination coalescing within him, each moment weaving threads of a choice not yet made, a choice that teetered on the edge of fate. "We're going to figure this out," he declared, snapping his gaze back to me. "What are we going to do?" The floor beneath us felt like quicksand, my thoughts swirling in a chaotic dance. My mind raced, grappling with panic but juxtaposed with the fiery moves of action that lingered like a whisper. And then, something ignited deep within, an unexpected surge of resolve. "We can build a plan," I asserted, surprising even myself. "We can outsmart them. Just like a chess game. We don't have to be the pawns." An ember of hope flickered in Dad's eyes as he absorbed my words. A glint of recognition crossed Mr. Alder's face, and I felt Rachel's quiet agreement fill the air like a promise. But just as I thought we might be forging a way out of this mess, the ground shook beneath our feet. The door rattled again, harder this time, and a commotion erupted outside, voices clashing, shadows darting. It was a reminder that time was painfully short. I turned to the woman standing so defiantly, desperate for answers. "Why is this happening? Who are they?" Her eyes softened, wavering but fierce. "They're not just interested in your father, but in secrets that could shatter everything you know. They seek power, whatever it takes." As if summoned by her words, a loud crash from the porch shattered the moment of clarity, followed by the unmistakable sound of a siren in the distance. Instinctively, we all froze, the noise pulling a veil of dread over us. "Time's almost up," Dan declared, his voice low and menacing. "Don't think you have the luxury of time." Just then, without warning, the stranger lunged forward toward the window, grabbing a metal rod discarded on the table. "No more games. If we're forced to fight, I want back down." And just like that, the atmosphere shifted, courage surged, igniting the tension between us and the approaching danger. But in the chaotic flurry around us, a sparking realization surged through me. Could we turn the tide, not just as isolated fragments of hope, but as a family forged through the fires of uncertainty? Or would we remain trapped between the crosshairs of fate? As my breath quickened, my hands trembled in uncertainty, inhaling the fear and hope alike. The next few moments felt like an eternity, teetering on the brink of chaos and decisions that would alter the course of our lives forever. and just when I thought we might break through, Dad's phone buzzed loudly from his pocket, its harsh ring slicing through the room like a knife. He looked at me, eyes wide, as the unexpected was about to unfold. Who could that be? He murmured, reaching for it, the tension stretching unbearably around us, knowing that what awaited on the other side could change everything we thought we knew. The air held its breath, just like us. The phone continued to vibrate ominously in Dad's hand, the shrill tone piercing through the palpable tension that wrapped around us like a suffocating fog. I could practically feel the urgency radiating off him, but I sensed that whatever awaited him on the other end could bring more chaos into our already fractured world. "Answer it," Rachel urged, her voice barely above a whisper, but filled with a steely determination. It could be important. With a shaky breath, Dad accepted the call, his expression flickering between hope and dread. "Hello," he said, his voice surprisingly stable, considering the chaos brewing around us. The moment of silence that followed was heavy, as if the entire universe had paused to listen. I watched the veins on his neck tighten and the way his jaw clenched as he took in whatever was being said. My heart raced with each passing second, wishing I could hear the words that weighed so heavily upon him. "What do you mean you found them?" he stuttered, brows knitting together. "I thought you said it was a dead end." A shared glance with Mr. Alder sent an icy shiver down my spine. Something dark and unpredictable coiled tighter around us as the sirens grew louder, drowning out any remaining hope. I closed my eyes for a moment, willing reality to slow, to help me understand the impending storm. "Listen, we don't have much time." Dad's tone turned urgent as he attempted to wrestle control of the conversation. "Whatever you've got, we need to move fast." But the sound of dawn men clamoring at the door disrupted our brief moment of focus. They were growing more frantic, a hint of desperation echoing in their shouts. "You want me to just leave?" "No. My family is involved in this. I will not put them in danger." I could see his resolve and fear battling inside him, vulnerability flashing in his eyes when he glanced toward me. I wanted to reach out, to remind him we were in this together, but the tempest outside pressed closer. "Just tell me where you are. I'll find you." Dad barked into the phone. "Well, make it work." He hung up abruptly, his face pallid, the adrenaline of the moment shadowing the earlier resolve he had exuded. A wild vulnerability seeped into his voice as he faced us, the previously steadfast warrior now appearing lost among the battleground of life and death. "What's wrong?" I pressed, clutching Rachel's arm. "What did they say?" His eyes searched mine, filled with a mix of regret and urgency. "They found someone. Someone who knows where we are. They'll have to go to protect you," he explained, dread draping over his features like a shroud. "No!" Rachel shouted, her voice firm, though fear flickered in her gaze. "We can't split up now, not when we're so close. There has to be another way. I can't let you get hurt," Dad insisted, his voice resolute but trembling. Before I could respond, a muffled crash reverberated from the door, followed by a chorus of loud, angry voices snarling threats. The walls felt as though they were vibrating with danger, and I could feel the fragile threads of time unfurling around us. "Let's get out of here," Mr. Alder yelled, his voice a booming beacon amidst the growing cacophony. "There's a back door." Panic surged in our chests as if it were a living thing, pushing us toward action. We had to do something, anything, to escape this tightening grip of uncertainty. "Follow my lead," I shouted, adrenaline fueling my instinct to protect my family. Before I could think further, I turned to the woman who had always stood steadfast and brave. "You know this place better than any of us. Can you show us the back exit?" Her face broke into a determined smile. "I can help, but we need to move quickly." As she guided us toward the hallway, I could hear footsteps becoming increasingly erratic as dawn men began bursting through the door, their shadows projected like dark sentinels on the walls of our once safe haven. We stumbled through the cramped corridor, adrenaline fueling our movements, my heart racing violently as urgency slipped its icy fingers around my throat. Rachel kept close to me, her eyes wide but searching for courage. I caught my father's gaze one last time, wishing to anchor him as fear crackled between us like a live wire. Just as we reached the faint light spilling through the back door, our escape was abruptly interrupted. A figure emerged from the darkness, one I never expected to see, a face I recognized yet could barely comprehend within this storyline of chaos. Mason, the boy from school who'd always had a knack for being there just when I thought I was alone, stood there stunned, breathless, yet urging, "You have to come with me. It's not safe here." Dad hesitated, torn between the need to protect me and the desperate call of the unknown. "They're coming. We can't keep talking, just come on." Mason shouted, grim urgency pouring from his voice. Courage flooded through me, outweighing my doubts. This boy was offering us a glimmer of hope in an impending storm. I took a step toward him, feeling that tether of connection we had forged through solitary moments in the lunchroom, yet as I turned back to Dad, the shadows grew thick and hostile, the choice lay heavy in the air, and just as I took a breath to speak, a shout from dawn men erupted like a thunderclap, shattering the moment of hesitation that clung tightly around us. "We have to go now," I implored, pulling Rachel forward, willing Dad to understand the urgency that alighted in my chest, but before we could escape, the wall of darkness surged closer, cruel laughter mingling with the chaos, and I realized with startling clarity that our journey had only just begun. With every heartbeat, we stood on the precipice of fate. What lay ahead would test us in ways we hadn't yet fathomed, twisting our destinies together into something unbreakable or unraveling everything, and as we charged into the night, the echoes of our past whispered behind us, threading uncertainty into the fibers of our future. I felt the walls of our world close around us, leaving nothing but the promise of unimaginable challenges waiting to unfold, just out of sight. As we barreled through the back door into the cool night air, light and darkness danced around us, a stark contrast to the mayhem behind. The urgency pressed against our skin like the stakes of a match, every missed moment a jab toward finality. I could hear the muffled shouts and footsteps echoing behind us, a sinister soundtrack hinting at the chaos lurking in our wake. "Where do we go now?" I gasped, grappling with a burgeoning anxiety that threatened to unravel everything we had fought for. Mason gripped my shoulder, his eyes scanning the dimly lit street. "We have to get to my place. My dad has a car we can use. It's not far." Doubt threaded through me like smoke, lingering and suffocating. "What if they follow us?" "We won't let that happen," he affirmed, his voice steadier than the tremors in my heart. "I promise." His outburst ignited something within me, a flicker of trust one hadn't realized was so desperately needed. I nodded, looping my arm through Rachel's as we hurried alongside him, Dad trailing close behind, shouting for us to stay together. The chill of the night air surged through me, the nuances of the world sharpening, every sound amplified by adrenaline, the rustling leaves, a distant dog barking, and the echo of our footfalls against the pavement. Each pulse felt marked by a fear that threatened to crush me, while underneath was an unmistakable sense of camaraderie, each breath forging new alliances in a world determined to tear us apart. Within moments, our footsteps navigated us through a labyrinth of shadows, the stark outline of Mason's house emerging like an island of sanctuary amidst our storm. He led us through a narrow space between two buildings, his urgency palpable in every swift movement. As we slipped through the gate into his backyard, I exhaled a breath I didn't realize I'd been holding. Rachel looked up at me, vulnerability mirrored in her wide eyes as she whispered, "Do you think we'll be safe here?" I had no answer for her. Uncertainty settled thick around us like fog. But I offered her a small smile, hoping to shield her fears with a flicker of optimism. "We have to be for now." Mason unlocked the back door and ushered us inside, his home modest yet teeming with warmth and life. The smell of something sweet wafted through the air, momentarily distracting me from the chaos lurking outside. My eyes landed on family photos, a comforting reminder that even in turmoil, love had a place to flourish. "Stay here," Mason instructed, guiding us into the living room. "I'll grab my dad." He vanished into the hallway, his presence a fleeting ghost before it absorbed into the home's familiar shadows. I turned to my father, and in that moment of stillness, I sought to read him, searching for any sign that he was all right. His brow was deeply furrowed, and lines of anxiety had etched themselves deeper into his skin. "What's next?" Dad asked, weariness threaded into his voice. But even in his uncertainty, a fierce protectiveness lingered. He was holding together the pieces of our fragmented lives with sheer will. "I don't know," I confessed softly, an uncharacteristic weight in my throat. But well, figure it out. A tension pulled at the corners of the room, stretching into an aching silence. The gravity of the situation felt heavier here, inside this sanctuary against the world outside. I wasn't sure whether we were truly safe or merely perched on the edge of a broader calamity. My thoughts spiraled, drowning the flickering moments of hope as the windows trembled in their frames, shadows veiling us in an illusion of safety. Mason returned, his father's absence an unsettling gap that highlighted both the precariousness of our situation and his own vulnerability. He's not home. He had to run an errand, Mason explained, his voice flickering between fear and frustration. A pressing weight of dread enveloped me. He's not going to be back soon, is he? I asked, rising hope punctured by uncertainty. No. He shook his head ruefully. Then, with a strained resolve, he added, you guys can stay here as long as you need to. We'll figure out our next move. Just then, the unsettling wail of a siren pierced through the night air, drawing closer with each heartbeat, merging the concerns echoing in my chest with a whisper of impending danger. Our momentary refuge might unravel within moments, and I felt the cracks in our fragile safety expanding. Dad narrowed his eyes thoughtfully, the urgency returning to his demeanor. We can't stay here if dawn men are searching. We need to move again. No. I took a step closer, passion fueling my plea. We can't keep running. What do we even have left? We can't let fear dictate every choice we make, but we have to take precautions. Dad argued, a flicker of desperation dancing in his voice. Mason leaned in, genuine concern swirling in his deep-set eyes. What if we make a plan? Just for tonight. No one's gonna think to look for you here in the dark. We could wait it out. The tension vibrated in the air as our voices intertwined in a web of uncertainty. Rachel wrung her hands, glancing between us with fear etched upon her face. Just as I opened my mouth to articulate my thoughts, a loud crash broke the stillness, whiplashing us into a dreadful silence. That wasn't us, I murmured, feeling the blood drain from my face. Mason's eyes widened, flicking toward the back door. They're searching the neighborhood. Panic ignited, a rush of adrenaline overwhelming our minds. We hurried to peer out of the window, each second stretching into infinity. Shadows sliced through the darkness, voices booming like thunder as they fanned out, hunting the neighbors, unfurling their lives beneath the scrutiny of our relentless pursuers. Get down. Dad's voice broke through the chaos, urgent and commanding. We dropped to the floor, hearts hammering painfully against our ribs, instincts kicking in as we held our breath. And amidst the chaos, I felt a sudden yearning for the mundanity of life before the storm, desiring warmth, laughter, and the simple joy of knowing that tomorrow existed. As the voices drew closer, I could hear something break splintering wood, a guttural bark of triumph from the approaching figures. The night had morphed into an orchestra of our fears, the crescendo building toward a haunting crescendo. I clutched Rachel's hand tightly, our shared bond manifesting in the unbreakable grip of two girls facing darkness, resonating with an unspoken promise that whatever happened next, we would stand together. And just as that cursed thought settled in, a figure passed by the window, silhouetted against the moonlight, too familiar, too haunting. The breath caught in my throat, the reality twisting into something unfathomable. My heart clenched. Dad, I whispered, terror lining my voice. I think they found us. But it was too late. The world beyond our fragile sanctuary warped, and whatever lay outside was about to change everything we knew forever. The night, thick with tension, felt suffocating as I kept my eyes fixed on the dark silhouette moving just past the window. My heart raced, racing ahead of my thoughts, and for a moment, dread fogged my mind as I wrestled with the implications of what I was seeing. The person outside, cloaked in shadow, might hold more than our fate in their hands. They might hold secrets I wasn't ready to uncover. Keep quiet, Dad whispered, urgency laced with fear threading through his voice. He looked at Mason with a mix of desperation and anger, yet underneath was an undercurrent of darkness. Where's your dad? We can't stay here, but Mason couldn't answer. His brows knitted together, his mouth pressed into a thin line, eyes darting towards the door. I don't know. I don't want to leave you guys, he replied, his voice barely above a whisper. Can't we do something? Rachel's voice quavered, a mixture of hope and despair weaving through her words. What if we hide? Where? Dad shot back, anxiety painting his features. They could be breaking down doors. We'll be sitting ducks in this house. I know a place, Mason interjected, a spark igniting in his eyes. In the basement me Dad keeps old things down there. We could hide. Just then, the shadows outside shifted, and I caught sight of a flashlight beam slicing through the darkness like a knife. My breath hitched in my throat as the beam drew nearer, illuminating the bricks of the house in harsh white. I could imagine their figures moving cautiously on the other side, relentless, and those that should have been protectors now hunting us like prey. That we scrambled toward the back of the house, a collective urgency pressing against us, hearts pounding in our ears. Mason led the way, ushering us to a narrow door tucked behind a bookcase, obscured from view. I could barely breathe, every breath felt like a weight, grounding me while the walls pressed in with the promise of danger. Just as we squeezed through the door, a loud thud echoed through the house, shaking the floor beneath us. My heart plummeted, and everything inside me screamed to flee, yet here we were trapped in the shadows. That we tumbled into the basement, a room cluttered with old furniture and forgotten relics of a life untouched by time. The dim light barely illuminated the space, casting long shadows that twisted and curled in eerie shapes. As we huddled together, gasping for breath, I could feel a strange sense of kinship forming in the darkness, a shared understanding that somehow, we were in this together. Mason's hands trembled as he fumbled with an old lamp, trying to summon any shred of light. I can't seem to get it to work, he muttered, frustration mingling with fear. Just try again, I urged, feeling a flicker of panic as another banging sound reverberated through the house. Was this truly how it was all going to end? The thought was unbearable, but the palpable connection in the room reminded me that I wasn't alone. None of us were alone. Then, with a reluctant squeal, the lamp flickered to life, casting an uneven glow across the room. As the light waned back and forth, illuminated dust particles danced in the air, creating a surreal play of shadows around us. Rachel let out a small sigh of relief, though her anxiety lingered in the air. At least we can see, she said, her voice a whisper laced with hope. Just then, in the far corner of the room, I noticed something glimmering beneath an old blanket. Curiosity piqued, I made my way over, kneeling beside a trunk covered in dust. Something about it felt significant, and as I brushed aside the dirt, my fingers grazed the cool surface of metal. Hey, what's that? Mason asked, drawn over by the light. I tugged at the trunk's rusted latch, and to my astonishment, it creaked open, revealing an array of items seemingly lost to time: photos, an old chess set, and a few letters tied together with a frayed ribbon. My heart raced. Was this a sign? Could these pieces of the past reveal something that might help us in the present? As I sifted through the contents, I pulled up a photograph of Mason's dad holding a young Mason, both beaming with joy against a backdrop of what looked like a family barbecue. Beside the photograph was a letter, its edges yellowed and fragile. A sudden wave of emotion swept over me. This was a connection to the man we needed to find. What is it? Dad asked, his voice steady despite the chaos threatening to consume us. It's a photo of your dad, I said, my voice barely above a whisper. And a letter it looks like from someone he cared about. Mason peered over my shoulder, his eyes widening. I've never seen these. He didn't talk about family much. Maybe. His excitement wavered, the reality of our situation looming heavier than any glimmer of hope. Maybe what? I pressed, anchoring onto his rising spiral of hope. Maybe he could have connections that would help us. A way out, Mason suggested, already pulling the letter free from its binding. As he hastily unfolded it, the momentary light in the basement dimmed. A creeping sense of foreboding washed over me, a whisper that something monumental was about to unfold, followed by the dread that the darkness beyond our refuge was closing in swiftly. But just then, the basement door rattled with a force that sent shivers across my spine. I jumped, adrenaline surging through me as we exchanged anxious glances. They're here, Dad said grimly, his face a mask of fear and determination. Mason's grip tightened around the letter, and he let out a breath, voice trembling slightly. I can't let them find it. I can't let them find us. Please, just read it. I insisted, the walls of time closing in on us. As he began to unfold the letter, a scream echoed from above, followed by a crash. The world outside faded, replaced by the thunder of my heartbeat and the hope that thrummed inside me. The letter might just hold answers and perhaps, our salvation. But in this critical moment, uncertainty sliced through the air like glass, each breath feeling like a countdown to chaos. The next sound we heard shattered the precarious silence, the unmistakable sound of footsteps heavy, relentless, breaking through the veil of what little safety we had left. And in that instant, a sickening realization dawned upon me: someone we knew, someone close had turned against us. Behind every shadow, every flash of danger, lay a thread of betrayal, one we may have unwittingly woven into our own lives. "Guys, we have to do something," Rachel whispered, her eyes wide with terror. But what could we do? Unfolding mysteries and unveiling truths felt futile as thudding sounds escalated, echoing ominously toward us like a countdown to our inevitable confrontation. Time stretched almost unbearably as we waited, breathless and silent, believing that it was only a matter of moments before everything we fought for would shatter beneath the weight of the truth. The footsteps grew louder, reverberating through the foundation of the house, pulling us deeper into a vortex of fear. I could feel each thud resonating within my chest, sinking with my racing heart. Separated by only a thin layer of wood, we were on the brink of a revelation, and I couldn't shake the haunting notion that the profound connections unearthing within this basement might not save us at all. "Please, Mason," I urged, nearly breathless. "Just read the letter. It might hold something that can help us. Maybe it's a way out." My voice broke through the suffocating cocoon of anxiety, a desperate plea for the comfort of hope. Mason gripped the letter, his fingers trembling as he unfolded it, each crack of the fragile paper sounding like thunder in the stillness. The beam from the lamp flickered again, casting erratic shadows that danced wildly across the walls. The atmosphere thickened with an unspoken understanding the world outside was closing in, and every moment drew us dangerously closer to exposure. "It's from someone named Clara," Mason whispered, squinting at the delicate handwriting. The name struck a chord. I could almost hear echoes of the past reverberating through the air, weaving narratives we hadn't yet pieced together. "What does it say?" Rachel's voice wavered, urgency bouncing against the damp walls as the sounds above us intensified. A chair scraping, a muffled conversation. "Dear Jacob," Mason started, each word plucking at the strings of our collective hope. "I know things have been difficult since the news. I want you to know you still have supporters, people who care about you more than you realize. I can't stand the thought of you going through this alone. If you ever need a way out, remember the pawn. Remember where the game began. I will always be waiting for you to find this piece, the pawn." Dad murmured, eyes wide with a mix of confusion and realization. I saw a flicker of recognition in his expression, something raw and aching clashing against the chaos bubbling around us. That is there more? I pressed, feeling the ground beneath us shift as fear mixed with anticipation. Mason continued, his voice steadier now. "There's an address. It mentions a safe place." He paused, and the gravity of what he was saying hung in the air like a promise wrapped in peril. The address could be a lifeline if only we could find a way out. But the louder the footsteps grew, the heavier we felt. "We need to hide it. I can't let them see it," or his voice trailed off, the unspoken fear of losing this thread of hope choking the air. "We can't let ourselves be trapped in fear," I argued, feeling a surge of determination coursing through me. "What if this is our chance? We need to know what it means." But before Mason could respond, the door creaked suddenly on its hinges, and the light from above filtered through the opening like the harbinger of doom. We held our breath, frozen in the dim light, our hearts racing as the shape of a figure loomed before the threshold, a silhouette bearing the unmistakable outline of a father, but not one we knew. "Jacob?" The stranger called, his voice low and gravelly, a chilling mixture of familiarity and menace. "Are you down there?" A wave of dread coursed through me, leaving me paralyzed. I shared a glance with Mason, his eyes reflecting unspoken fears, a mirror of my own confusion. "Is that?" he whispered, his face paling. "That I don't know," Rachel said, trembling, trying to peer past the shadowy figure into the blinding light above. "It'll go out, Dad said suddenly, steeling himself, giving presence to our unspoken fears. He might help us. His resolve was admirable but reckless. No. Dad, wait. I cried, the words spilling out in a rush of desperation, but it was too late. Had already taken a step towards the figure, a leap into the unknown. Jacob, it's time to talk, the intruder continued, his voice tinged with an unsettling calmness. Who are you? Dad demanded, standing firm against the unknown, both terror and anger woven into his voice. And then, as if time had come to a standstill, the figure took a step closer, bringing clarity. I could see him clearly now. A trickle of recognition washed over me, laced with disbelief that it was Uncle Leo, a man I had not seen for years, yet who came crashing back into our lives like a specter bearing burdens hidden deep beneath family secrets. Why are you here? Dad's voice cracked, a mixture of shock and confusion unfurling across the stark lines of his face. Leo's eyes darted toward the basement, then back to Dad, his expression unreadable. There's no time to explain. We need to get out of here now. His words echoed with urgency, but that urgency was countered by a storm of doubts swirling within me. What had brought him back? What dangerous currents swirled in his return? And why did the shadows today feel heavier than ever? Mason clutched the letter tighter, a visceral tension thickening in the air between us. We were trapped between choices, the choice between the safety of our fleeting sanctuary and the potential of a family torn apart by deception. Do you trust him? I whispered to Mason, my heart descending into a chasm of uncertainty as the weight of this decision settled heavily on my shoulders. Maybe, but he's never shown up for us before, Mason replied, his voice trembling, grappling with conflicting loyalties. As I turned back to the opening, my own pulse thundering in tandem with the chaos above, I knew one thin line we once drew between family and chaos was now blurred. Shadows invaded our sanctuary, and even in the face of what was potentially our salvation, I felt as if every piece, every person in this twisted game was moving closer to a checkmate we weren't prepared to confront. Guys, we need to hurry. Uncle Leo's voice snapped me back to the moment, but barriers of doubt and betrayal loomed ahead, waiting to ensnare us in its cruel trap. It felt like a paradox, safety and danger colliding unceremoniously as we stood at the edge of an uncertain path, knowing every choice we made from this point forward could ignite a chain of irreversible consequences. The dim light flickered as I stepped closer to the doorway, the distant thumping noises echoing above us like a heartbeat signaling doom or salvation. Uncle Leo's silhouette, framed by the brightness of the upstairs, beguiled me into a labyrinth of old memories and newly ignited questions. This man, a specter from a long-buried past, was suddenly the key that could unlock or irrevocably shatter everything. Come on, we don't have much time, he urged, urgency wrapping around his words. Yet it felt as though we stood on the precipice of a storm while he called us to safety. His presence conjured swirling fears that threatened to tear us apart. Mason, what do we do? I felt like the very ground beneath my feet was unsteady, rippling with uncertainty. Mason's grip tightened around the letter as if it were a talisman against the chaos. I don't know, Clara. Should we trust him? It's been years. His voice trailed off, leaving behind unspoken fears that hung heavy in the air. Maybe he's changed. Maybe he's here to help, I said, but even as I uttered the words, doubt gnawed at the edge of my thoughts. Or maybe he only brings danger, Rachel whispered, the tremor in her voice reflecting the uncertainty that bound us. Jacob. Uncle Leo called again, snapping me back to the dread imprinted on my father's face, his brother's once familiar features now painted with the weight of years and regret. We need to hurry before they find you down here. They? Who are they? Dad's voice was fire, igniting a protective instinct that flared like a wild flame. You know nothing of what's happening here, Leo. Enough. Leo shot back, his irritation crystallizing the tension in the room. You can fight me later. Right now, we need to move. I'm not here to hurt you, but I can't promise you'll be safe if you stay. My heart raced as I glanced at Mason, searching for some sign that he shared my turmoil. I had watched the boundaries of trust eroded over the years, families falling apart under the weight of secrets and betrayal. Adjusting myself to the possibility that we could leave this hell made my stomach churn with a deep anxiety. But what if leaving sent us straight into a trap? In that moment, I thought of the letter, of Clara's words that spoke of hope and a pawn that would help us find a way. It should have settled my nerves, but this felt different. It felt real, tangible, the kind of danger that wrapped around your throat and squeezed until you gasped for breath. Clara, I murmured, as the connection began to sharpen. What if she knew about Leo? What if she was warning us? I can't do this, Mason whispered, as if reading my mind. We might be stepping out of one nightmare and into another. He's right. Dad stepped forward, creating a barrier between us and unexpected facets of our past. We need to make a decision. But if we leave now, there are questions. There's no going back to what we had. Leo shifted nervously, glancing at the ceiling as if the weight of our conversations was bruising the fragile foundation of this house, threatening to expose us. You think I want to be here? You think I chose to come back? You all know the past haunts me. But there's no time to explain everything now. Just trust me for a moment that I can't. I yelled in a cry that tore through the suffocating silence. If we go with you, what else are we giving up? The emotional turmoil of my family's fabric fell heavily on my heart, stretched thin and frayed at the edges. It's not about giving up, Leo said, with an unsettling calm. It's about surviving. They're coming for you, a reckoning that has haunted our family for far too long. If we don't move, we will bear the ruin. In that instant, the world above us seemed to grow louder, a cacophony pulsing like a drum's steady beat, each thrum vibrating through the walls, enveloping us in fear. Someone was making their way down. The shadows flickered with an ominous promise, and my pulse quickened with every second that I hesitated, the weight of the letter in Mason's hands feeling like a bridge to a hopeful tomorrow, while Leo stood like a dark shadow, an unfinished story waiting to spill. Its secrets. What about the address? I asked, desperation creeping into my voice. We need to know if it's a sanctuary or the set of a trap, but Uncle Leo hardly let me finish. He's not the one you need to be afraid of. You can't understand what's at stake. I'll explain on the way, but right now, it will be your life or. The sentence hung thick in the air, suspended by the tension that bound us. Just as I felt myself being tugged toward him, a sudden crash reverberated from above, and footsteps thundered down the stairway, sending shivers racing down my spine. Now! Uncle Leo's voice demanded, a wildfire stirring inside. We move now. It felt like stepping off a cliff, the ground vanishing beneath me, uncertainty swelling like an incoming tide. As we ran toward that gaping light, I turned back to look at Mason, and in his eyes, I glimpsed the haunting shadows of betrayal mixed with the flickers of hope. The burning questions left unasked hung between us, binding us together even as we faced the unknown. As we rushed into the blinding light, the realization dawned that it wasn't just about leaving, it was the beginning of unraveling a truth far deeper than I ever anticipated. And that truth, now shrouded in whispers and chaos, was still waiting to break free. For a moment, the world outside felt like a different planet, one filled with uncertainty, swirling with dust and shadows. We burst forward, propelled into the uncertain light, compelled to escape whatever lurked behind those walls. Uncle Leo led the charge, his presence both grounding and unsettling, a walking contradiction we had never anticipated returning to our lives. The abrupt transition from the musty basement to the cool night air left me disoriented. I staggered, taking in my surroundings, the reality of our flight settling upon my shoulders like a heavy cloak. The streets were still too quiet, too peaceful, echoing the heartbeats that pulsed in time with my fear. The sirens had subsided, but their wailing left an unsettling residue that clung to us. Where do we go? Mason's voice trembled as his eyes darted toward Uncle Leo, searching for a strategy to escape the turmoil. There's a car not far from here, Leo replied tersely, guiding us onward, oblivious to our reluctance, spurring us forward through the crushing weight of ambiguity. We can discuss everything once we're safe. My heart twisted at his words, for the undefined safe felt fragile and ethereal, a mirage hiding the truth. As we trotted down the dimly lit street, I found my breath catching at every unfamiliar sound, a rustle of leaves, the distant bark of a dog, the echoes of laughter that painted lives untouched by the chaos swallowing us whole. Please, Uncle Leo, I urged, my voice breaking against this reality. We have questions. We need to know why you're here, why now. He paused for a heartbeat, casting a shadow of doubt over my own thoughts. I'm not the enemy here, he said, voice low yet firm. But time is of the essence, and trust is a commodity you can't afford right now. Everything he said spread within me like a poisonous flower, blooming with conflicting emotions. I wanted to trust him, I longed to believe he had come back for us, to protect us, but years of betrayal and secrets wove tightly around my heart, snaring any remnants of innocence. Trust doesn't just appear on a whim, Leo, Dad interjected, planting his feet defiantly against the street. We need to know where we fit into this. But before Uncle Leo could respond, the sudden sound of a distant engine roared to life, cutting through the night like a knife. Instinctively, pallor washed over our faces. We have to move. He urged again, capturing our attention as panic gripped us. The rhythmic pounding of our feet against the pavement echoed like a countdown, each step drawing us closer to freedom, or perhaps closer to a trap we couldn't foresee. Shadows flickered behind us, causing dread to slice through the air, the sensation of being hunted looming heavily upon our shoulders. Where's the car? I gasped, breathless and anxiety clawing my throat tight as we navigated the surprisingly empty streets. There. Leo pointed to an old sedan parked haphazardly against a lamppost, its paint chipped and fading, appearing as worn as our hopes. Get in. Just as we approached the car, the engine roared again, this time closer, sharper. The muffled echo of voices rose in volume, mingling with our growing panic. Get inside. Leo barked, urgency bleeding through his words as he accelerated our pace. I flung the door open, leaping into the back seat, ushering Rachel and Mason within. Dad hesitated a beat longer, wrestling with the weight of his decisions, but soon followed suit, crates of worry shifting in his eyes. Unlock the doors. I urged Leo, panic clawing in my chest as I caught sight of shadows loitering at the end of the street. With quick reflexes, Leo hitched the door locks into place, casting quick glances through the rearview mirror as fear narrowed his focus. Buckle up. He commanded, cranking the engine as the growling sound reverberated behind us. A blinding glare suddenly pierced the night, a set of headlights barreling down the street, tearing toward our refuge with a reckless abandon. I could see the figures behind the wheel, mouths moving but hazy figures blending into the dark night. The sirens were closing in. The world was pressing against us as chaos screamed a haunting refrain. Just as I thought we were lost, vivid memories filled my thoughts, the warmth of laughter borrowed from family gatherings, the comfortable feeling of safety, the sense that together, we were invincible. But sitting here, consequences of choices past tugged mercilessly, training their weight upon our fragile lives. Go, Leo. Just go. Dad urged, urgency bleeding into his tone as he scanned the street, bracing for whatever storm awaited us. The engine roared to life, escaping the noise of that distant chaos as the car surged ahead, streaking into the night. As we sped down the darkened street, a dreadful silence enveloped us, lingering in the absence of our former lives. The city flowed past us in blurs, lights flickering while we held our breaths, teetering on the brink of the unknown with each pulse of the tires meeting asphalt. I've got to warn you, you won't like what's coming next, Leo said, his voice resolute yet filled with quiet pain. You need to know this is connected to your mother's past. I felt a chill race down my spine as his words hung heavy in the air, carrying consequences intermingled with secrets long buried. What do you mean? I whispered, dread tangling my every thought. Before he could respond, the headlights of another vehicle illuminated the rearview mirror, drawing closer, echoing an approach that sent a ripple of terror through my veins. Someone's following us. Mason cried, anxiety rising with unbearable intensity. With a sharp turn, Leo veered down another side street, weaving through an industrial landscape that felt altogether foreign yet oddly familiar. But shadows were relentless now, they bled into our veins, skewing the very essence of what we sought. What's happening? I demanded, frantic eyes darting between masked faces behind us and Uncle Leo's taut features, the echo of each heartbeat growing louder with a steady thrumming that felt like a clock winding down to ominous silence. Trust me, we need to go to the safe house, Leo breathed, gripping the wheel tightly, and I could sense the tension radiating between our shared histories. But you need to promise no questions until we're safe. We need to make it there first. I couldn't tell if my heart was racing from fear, but somewhere within, a small ember of hope flickered, recognizing our ability to refuse to bow to chaos, to embrace our strength despite the looming threat. We shot down unfamiliar streets, uncertainty wrapping tighter with every turn, yet I grasped for the small promise myself: if we survived this, we would find the answers hiding beneath layers of fear and doubt. I turned to Mason, his face pale but determination igniting within him, mirroring the spirit swirling within me. The subtle bond we had formed in adversity tethered us, reminding me that whatever awaited us, we would face it together. Just hold on, I whispered to Rachel, her eyes wide with fear, driven by the urgent pulse of adrenaline that rushed through us. The moment stretched longer than ever as we darted through dimly lit neighborhoods, avoiding the chaos that had come to characterize our lives. The streetlights flickered like fading stars above us as shadows chased us, quick glimpses of misguided intentions chasing after the remnants of who we were. "Leo!" I shouted, voice raw with urgency. "You said our lives were at stake. What do you mean by our mother's past?" His jaw tightened at the question, and as the city slipped further behind, I could sense the tension taut within him. "You don't understand. There are people out there who are willing to do anything to protect what they think belongs to them. Your mother was part of something greater than you know, something that has roots tracing back to this city's darkest dealings." My heart twisted painfully as the weight of secrets my mother's decisions swelled between us, threatening to break apart every thread of belonging I had known. How could nostalgia drown so easily in shadows? Why had they failed to protect me? A wall of darkness loomed ahead, swallowing light alive, and as fear and urgency churned together in silence, I squeezed Mason's hand. Whatever we were facing held no promise. We were bound to question everything, but we had to hold on to the faith that we'd discover the truth. "Please," I murmured, willing him to hurry as the glow from another set of headlights swept over us, barreling toward us with a grim intensity. "We can't let them catch us." Just as my heart felt ready to break free of its cage, Leo's eyes lit up with a fierce determination. "Buckle up. We're going to get through this." With a swift maneuver that revealed his sheer determination, he shot toward an alley, veering between abandoned buildings, taking shapes that whispered of forgotten dreams. The car careened through the narrow passage, the sharp turn sending my stomach twisting. Our lives hung like fragile strands, and as I closed my eyes, grappling with the weight of promises left unfulfilled, I could only focus on the one thought echoing within: if we made it through this, I had to unravel those secrets buried with my mother. And as we ducked deeper into the shadows, the feeling wrapped around meth knowledge that whatever lay within the truth wouldn't just impact our past, it would ultimately shape the people we were meant to become. "We're almost there," Leo called, urgency forming an electric charge around us. The weight of the night felt heavier than ever, and in the rush of pain and uncertainty, we could either shatter beneath its pull or rise up together. And deep down, I knew we would find the answers waiting at the edge, where light and darkness met, a final face-off between what we wished to hold on to and the shadows that ultimately sought to define our fate. As we whizzed through the dim passage, the reality of our reunion and our shared journeys danced in the air, a promise that even as the walls threatened to close in, together, we would forge new beginnings from the heart of our choice, a gamble against the odds, relentlessly chasing the truth beneath the layers of darkness. It was only the beginning etched with shadows, but with the promise of an unyielding dawn. And as I gripped the thread of hope, the moment felt as delicate as glass, fragile, yet fiercely alive. "Together," I whispered, the phrase hanging in the air, waiting to take flight.